Paul Haggis, you directed Show Me a Hero on HBO, and you've done a lot of work on TV before, but this is, sort of like an extended 6-hour movie. Was this a different experience from the previous TV directing you've done before?
Well, I haven't done any TV directing for an awfully long time, and this was different because it was the first thing that I'd done that I hadn't written. And I leapt at it because I'd always wanted to work with David Simon. I'd always been a huge admirer of him and his work. So, yeah, but it was very different in that way. And also just the size of it, 6 hours straight through, shot like a movie, with not a movie budget. And it was incredibly challenging, but so fulfilling.
And David Simon is such a distinctive writer and a producer. He's dealt with a lot of institutional and cultural issues like this before, like in The Wire and Treme and The Corner. What's it like working with him now? With his point of view and with his style.
I mean, that's what drew me to the project. As I said, I got involved in this because I was in prep on a movie, and that shut down because of actor availability, and I had a window. And so my agents called and said, well, we have this offer for you for a movie, and this is interest over here, and David Simon has a miniseries. And I said, whoa, wait, stop, go back. What was that? I said, David Simon has a miniseries. He wants you to talk to you about it. I said, say yes. They said, great, we'll send you the script, and then we'll discuss. I said, no, say yes, and then send me the script. And that's what I actually instructed them to do. So I read the first two first drafts they had that he and Bill Zorzi had written. And I went to meet with David and Nina here in New York. And they said, great, we'd like your work very much. And we'd love to work with you. What do you think of doing? You want to do the first episode, the last, the first and last? I said, no, I want to do them all. He said, really? So yeah, well, if I'm going to do television, I'm going to do the whole thing. And I went, oh, wow. And he'd never worked with a director in that way before. He'd always worked with episodic directors. And so I think it took a moment for him to think about that and how it would work. But we had great respect for each other. And so they said yes, and I was thrilled. It was great. He was on the set. David and Nina and Bill were on the set a great deal of the time. One of them was always there, often two, and many times the three of them. And so that was a great resource, especially for the actors. But we also had folks who had lived through this, like Nye Wasisco, who is portrayed in the movie, was there on the set often, and others would come. So that really grounded the piece, and along with the fact that we shot in the actual locations often.
Before getting the chance to make this miniseries, had you been familiar with the story of Nick Wasisco or the book by Lisa Belkin that the miniseries is based on?
I had not. I'm a fairly new New Yorker. I've only been here for 6 years full time, and so I when I read the script, the first draft, I just kept having to check the dates and say, no, this can't have happened in 1990, and it can't have happened in New York. When you think about desegregation, you think these things. You think the South, you think Birmingham, you think the '60s, you think maybe Boston and the busing, but you do not think New York 1990. And so that was a reason, one of the big reasons why I thought this story needed to be told, because the fact that this is endemic, and it continues. In fact, it's happening again right now. Very close to where it happened in this movie. It's happening right now in Tarrytown, New York.
Given the, as you mentioned, the segregation that was happening in Yonkers at the time, and the idea that this was happening in 80s and 90s New York was kind of a shock to the system for me when I watched the miniseries. Is it sort of like a demonstration of how far this whole country, still has to go dealing with this kind of discrimination? I mean, sometimes we have this illusion that we're sort of post-racial, and then something like this pops up, and it just sort of.
That's exactly correct. I mean, when I did Crash, which is, I guess, 11 years ago now, I remember one of the first reviews came out and said, if this had been done 10 years ago, we'd call this brave, we'd think it relevant, but we just don't have these problems anymore. This is like the Hollywood Reporter or somebody. I can't cast aspersions on them, but it was someone like that. And that day, while I was reading that, there was what was described as a race riot at the Santa Monica High School. And I think as liberals, we are very, very guilty of this, especially guilty of this, because we like to think we are good people. And good people would not put up with this kind of thing, right? We're good people. And so no matter what our race, when we get to a certain class, we think, well, yes, I'm sure we've done well here. And we are good to these people over here. And we just by defining it that way, we are good to these people. It's just, and by distancing ourselves from that, we don't solve the problem. We just keep it going. We do enough to make ourselves feel good and have go sort of out of the headlines, and that's it. And we don't solve the problems. These problems are going on right now in every city in America and are going to continue until they're actually addressed.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about this this miniseries sort of coinciding with this presidential election campaign, where we've seen obviously how much racial animus is driving a big part of this campaign. I mean, Donald Trump won New York State, the primary. Do you think Show Me a Hero kind of shows us a local version of sort of that phenomenon happening nationwide?
Well, I don't think it does. It's not a local issue, as you know. And that's one I think that drew David to this very much, and Lisa's book did very well in showing that this is America. This is the way we are. It's the way we have been, and there's no sense denying it. We really need to address it. And you start off with Oscar Isaac playing the young mayor who actually comes in on the wrong side of the issue. It's just politics as usual. He just wants to get elected. And so the current mayor is for building this public housing, and he comes in on the other side. And he quickly loses before they lose out on that issue with the Supreme Court before he even takes office. And then he has to champion it because it's the right thing to do. It's what you have to do, or the city will go bankrupt. Even trying to do something that you have to do that is federally mandated is obviously very unpopular, and he pays the price for it. It's a great story because we didn't really focus on him as much. Well, we did focus on him, but we also focused on the entire community, and both those on the east side and the west, and everyone who was involved, who just wanted to, in one way or another, have a home and protect it, and have a decent standard of living. And so we tried not to paint obvious villains in this, or obvious heroes. All our heroes are very, very flawed, and you look at some of our villains and you go, well, they kind of have a point. I mean, with the information they have, what they're deciding on, with the information that's fed to them by politicians who are fear-mongering. Oh, okay, well, if I take that to be true, I understand. So it's that nationwide fear-mongering is happening right now, and always happens. It always comes out in our elections, not just ours. You look around the world.
Yeah, what's interesting about how the story takes a look at not just the politics of it, but the lives of the individual people and families who would benefit from the social from the public housing. What struck me was that a lot of the white residents who are protesting, they're active, they're angry, they're loud, but a lot of the poor people who need a voice and should have a voice. A lot of their lives are just spent trying to get through the day, trying to keep their families together, trying to keep food on the table and keeping roofs over their heads. Is that sort of poverty? That level of struggle sort of part of why there might be some kind of political disengagement sometimes?
I think so, and also you've got the fact that even now, I was just reading a book called Evicted, a wonderful book about how right now, among anybody who's either on minimum wage or anybody who is, on public assistance of any sort, they're spending, somewhere between 60 and 75% of what they get just on rent, And then there's, on top of that, there's the utilities, etc. And then what's left over? A little bit for food, nothing for their kids, nothing. And how do you survive like that? And that's right now today, across America. So we don't have to look back even to 1990 to realize that the system is really damaged and needs repair. And yet a lot of people, as you say, they sit there and go, well, look, we give them money. They should be grateful. People deserve dignity, bottom line. They don't have to be rich. They don't have to be well off. They're not asking for that. But maybe shoes. Maybe shoes for the kids would be good. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm radical.
Yeah, and what's interesting is seeing a lot of these issues play out on in the local government of Yonkers at the time, and some of the most memorable scenes of the miniseries are those city council meetings where you see the chaos of the protests and them trying to get.
Alfred Molina was so brilliant in that, wasn't he? I just played this venal character, and he played it with such panache, and you just loved him. In fact, I loved anytime Fred was on set. But yeah, no, you really got to love these characters who were just outrageous and all completely based on fact. And the actors really went to work and really studied the video of the time and the reports and met with people who knew these people. And in many cases, they were alive, so they got to talk to people themselves. And our costumers did this. Certainly, Bill had spoken and interviewed many of them. That really brought something to the piece, and I think that's we just wanted to tell a story that was true. And my job was to make it look like it was true and feel like it was true, and feel like you were there. And that's what I tried to do. Not be fancy, but make you feel like you're in the middle of this. And that's what I did.
With so many characters and so much going on in those, especially those city council scenes, were those challenging to sort of assemble and shoot and stage?
Oh yeah, because, well, many reasons. First of all, anytime you shoot a riot, it's not easy to shoot, but also you're shooting on a budget, and so when there in fact were 1,000 people at a meeting, you can afford 100. so you need to find a way to make 100 feel like 1,000, and shooting behind them, finding ways to link the characters together so that you felt you're in this. And certainly sound was huge. Our sound design and what we did to make you feel like you're in the middle of that. Yeah, it was whenever you're shooting on a budget. I mean, we shot 6 to 10 pages every day of this. In a movie, you shoot a page to 3 pages. In a TV series, you shoot, I don't know, 5, 6 pages. We're 7 to 10, and we were rocking. And then on actual locations, I mean, for example, we wanted to shoot went to see Mary Dorman's house, and and the crew said, well, obviously it's way too small for us to shoot in. I went, yes, and that's why we're shooting here. It's because I wanted to feel exactly like this, like it was. And the fact that you can mirror what happened. She's one of the people trying to keep the housing out of her side of town. And you wanted to, in looking at her, feel that her life was not that much different than the lives of those in public housing. She just couldn't see the parallels. And when she actually took her to the public housing units and she met the people, her life changed. And that's as Catherine Keener showed us so beautifully. It was a wonderful performance. But shooting in the actual locations, finding the ways to make it feel real. That was the tough job.
Yeah, and shooting in the actual locations and having this, these events having happened so relatively recently, and many of the participants are still around. What was that like in terms of trying to be as true to this while people are still around to sort of judge? People who were there to see it are sort of around to be able to judge it for themselves.
Well, we didn't pull any punches, and that tone was set by David and Nina and Bill from the start. And certainly based on Lisa's book and what she did. So no, we offended some people. Yeah, of course. We tried to be sympathetic to all sides and all the folks, but we were not going to let them rewrite history. So there were some cases where even Nyla Cisco, who this was hard for her to watch and hard for her to be there. And in some cases, we were saying things about Nick that were hard for her to swallow. But she was there, and she said, "Yeah, that's what happened." And to her credit, and to a lot of the folks who participated, they said, "Yeah, that's who we were."
This is a big ensemble cast, but of course, leading the way is Oscar Isaac as Nick Wasisco. How is he cast, and what do you think he brought to the role that made him right for it?
This was before a lot of the great films he's done in the last year had come out, last year and a half, but we were all fans, and when David and Nina and I and Bill heard about his interest, we sent him the script and heard about his interest. We went, wow, he's a fabulous actor. My question is, could he play Polish? And so we had him in, and we talked, and as soon as Yonkers is a very specific accent, but he's really gifted with accents, and so he just disappeared into the role very quickly, and any concern we may have had about the physicality had disappeared with it.
And of course, as you mentioned, you wrote and directed the movie Crash and won a couple of Oscars, including Best Picture. So you've had this experience exploring this sort of subject matter in the past. But in the 10, 11 years that have intervened from that project to this one, has your perspective changed or deepened or evolved in any way?
I'd like to say that I'm more optimistic. I can't. Especially with what's happening now. It's hard. It's really hard for people to face the truth. Really hard. Maybe we made it a little easier by making it into entertainment. But I think they'd much rather watch Game of Thrones. So, so would I. It's a great movie, a great series. But it's not easy for people to look at what's going on around them, especially as close. It's easier to look at Africa and go, oh yes, there's obviously problems there, or South America and say, oh yes, the rainforest is being destroyed. And it's easier in some ways to empathize with people at a distance than it is up close. We judge people who are closest to us, and we think that we know who they are, and we don't. They could be living half a block from us, or half a mile, or a mile. We don't know who they are. And so until we actually engage and know what their real problems are, and know that if we were in that same situation, we would have the exact same problems, then we're not going to empathize, and we're not going to do anything about it. So I don't know how we do that. I don't know. I mean, but luckily the role of a filmmaker or filmmakers is to ask questions, not necessarily get answers. And so we ask the questions.
You had a lot of success working in both film and television, with so many opportunities opening up in TV as well as streaming services these days. Do you see yourself pursuing more projects like this one, kind of long form storytelling on this scale?
I didn't know if I'd like this or not. It is really brutal to shoot, this many episodes straight in a row and over this sort of range of dates. We're 87 through 93. We had to, in any one day, we'd be playing any 4 or 5 different time periods. It's fairly compact, but still, clothing changes, styles change, cars change, and so do anything. Period was tough, but I loved it. I mean, it was my poor assistant director Hayes. Every time I came to the set, he'd have this long face, and I'd go, "Hayes, what's wrong? What's wrong this morning?" He'd go, "I don't want to tell you." I go, "Come on, you gotta tell me." He goes, "Well, the crane didn't show up. There's people locked in traffic, and the extras can't get here. The street that we had blocked off, they'd actually blocked off the wrong street, and so we can't get our period cars in here. And the actress, Mr. Van's, gonna be 2 hours late." I went, "Oh, okay. Well, let's go shoot a great day." Because no excuse, we're not going to get another half hour. We have this amount of time to shoot. And so every day we were faced with these logistic problems because of the fact that it's so huge. You can't possibly prep 6 hours effectively in the amount of time we had to do it. So a lot of it was just run and gun. And we're doing that in a period piece, and you try to do it with a little bit of style. It's tough. But we took on that challenge, and I think the actors did as well, and they swung with me, and that was great. So yeah, I'd love to do it again.
Well, congratulations again on the miniseries. I thought it was fantastic, and I hope more people watch it, and I hope especially as this election season continues, that we start to look a little bit more closely at it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I wanted to let people know this. There's a great deal of humanity and humor in the piece. It's not just this dour piece. Oscar does this incredible tour de force piece over these 6 hours, and it makes his character so human, as are all the other characters, and it's really well worth watching. So yeah, I hope they watch it too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.